When you think of C.S. Lewis, you probably picture the wise, grandfatherly creator of Narnia, right? But what if I told you the man behind all that magic lived a much more complex story? We're talking about a journey from profound, deep-seated disbelief to becoming one of Christianity's most powerful voices.
I mean, he gave us Narnia, a world of deep magic, talking animals, and these epic battles, all centered around Aslan, the sacrificial lion. It's a world that's just so saturated with faith, it's kind of hard to imagine its author was once a totally committed atheist.
And that's the real puzzle, isn't it? The architect of this world of faith once said he was very angry with God for not existing. So how on earth did one of history's most committed skeptics become one of its most influential believers?
To really understand the author, we have to go back, way back, before the wardrobe, to the experiences that forged a man who was completely convinced that faith was just a fool's errand.
You know, Lewis wasn't just a passive non-believer. His atheism was a core part of who he was, and it was forged by personal tragedy and the brutal realities of the 20th century.
His disbelief was really built on a foundation of pain. It started with the absolutely devastating loss of his mother when he was just 9 years old. That personal tragedy was then compounded by intellectual doubt at school, and then it was all solidified by the sheer horror of World War I. He fought in the trenches and was even wounded by friendly fire. It's just this powerful mix of personal and global suffering.
And he was never quiet about his beliefs. A school friend called him a riotously amusing atheist, saying he was outspoken and even profane in his rejection of religion. So this wasn't a man just wrestling with doubt. Nope. He had chosen his side, and he was proud of it.
His atheism also had a really strong intellectual anchor. He would often quote the Roman poet Lucretius, wrestling with that classic problem of pain. You know, how could a good, all-powerful God create a world so full of flaws and suffering? For the young C.S. Lewis, the logical answer was simple. He couldn't.
But then, someone happened. A friendship, forged at Oxford University, would end up challenging every single certainty Lewis had so carefully built.
So this is the Eagle and Child pub in Oxford, and amidst all the pipe smoke and pints of beer, a group of friends who called themselves the Inklings would meet to debate literature, myth, and the meaning of it all. And right at the heart of this group were two of the 20th century's literary giants.
So get this, Lewis had been warned against two types of people. Papists, which was a term for Catholics, and philologists, who were experts in language. Well, his new friend J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings, was both. Their friendship alone was basically an act of rebellion against the prejudices of their time.
His journey back to faith wasn't some sudden flash of light. No, it was more like a slow, intellectual, and emotional siege. It all started with him reading fantasy that reawakened his imagination. Then came years of these long, intense conversations with friends like Tolkien. It was a gradual surrender, first to just the idea of a god in 1929, and then, 2 years later, to Christianity itself.
And he didn't describe his conversion with any joy or excitement. He described it as a defeat. He called himself the most dejected and reluctant convert in all England. He felt like a prodigal son brought in kicking, struggling, resentful, and darting his eyes in every direction for a chance to escape. But this reluctant surrender, well, it unlocked something truly extraordinary. The intellectual energy that he once used to argue against God was now channeled into explaining and storytelling for him.
And the result was staggering. More than 100 million copies of the Narnia series sold. What began as this very personal intellectual battle became a global cultural phenomenon.
But his legacy goes so far beyond Narnia. He directly took on the problem of pain, the very issue that fueled his atheism, in a book with that exact title. The Screwtape Letters cleverly explored temptation, and Mere Christianity, which actually started as wartime radio broadcasts, became a cornerstone of modern Christian thought.
Now, Lewis always insisted that Narnia was not a simple allegory. He called it suppositional. He wasn't saying Aslan is Jesus. He was actually asking a question. What might a Christ-like figure look like if he were to enter a world like Narnia? It's a pretty profound thought experiment, mixing faith and fiction.
And the look and feel of Narnia? That was born in the landscapes of his Irish childhood. He said these mountains, the Mourne Mountains, made him feel that at any moment a giant might raise his head over the next ridge. And that feeling, that sense of myth just lurking beyond the horizon, that is Narnia.
So what's the lasting legacy of this incredible journey? Well, the outspoken atheist who began our story became this quiet giant of faith. He passed away in 1963 and is buried right here in Oxford, in a shared grave with his brother Warnie, who was his lifelong companion. A quiet end to a life that was full of intellectual and spiritual turmoil.
And here is a remarkable fact. His passing went almost unnoticed at the time. He died on November 22, 1963, the very same day that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and Aldous Huxley, the author of Brave New World, also died. 3 giants of the 20th century, all gone in a single day.
But, history has a way of remembering. 50 years later, he received one of Britain's highest literary honors, a memorial in Poets' Corner, placing him right alongside Chaucer, Shakespeare, and Dickens. The former outcast had found his place among the giants.
And the inscription they chose for that memorial, it just perfectly sums up his entire journey. For Lewis, faith wasn't something you just look at. It was the light by which he could finally see everything else clearly. From a world he once saw as frail and faulty to one completely illuminated by belief. Just a truly remarkable transformation.